All right, welcome back to Wrestling Retold and Relive with Richie Mars. I, of course, am your humble, gracious host, Richie Mars, and thank you for listening to this wherever you're listening to it, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, but we got to get right into it. A couple weeks ago, I went through the worst of TNA, and that took a toll. That took a toll on me, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. But we're here to talk about something kind of better. This is like the last gasp of the TNA as we knew it, in the form of, all right, we got AJ Styles, we're basing it around Samoa Joe, and this is like right before the Hulk Hogan era. This is the Main Event Mafia. Now, I know what you're thinking. Like, the Main Event Mafia, that group had so many key players, and it's like, it feels like since they were so impactful that they had a long stint. But no, their first run was legitimately just one full calendar year. So it's amazing that they still have that impact, no pun intended, to this day. But I couldn't do this alone. I had to phone in. I had to bring in the troop for this one, the top troop. Husky Rhodes, how we doing, my friend?
Richie, thank you for having me. This is going to be a fun one because I think we had initially talked about this on the Royal Rumble watch along we did, right?
I think it was the NXT Vengeance Day, I
Oh,
think.
it's the Vengeance Day
Yeah,
one.
yeah, yeah.
Yes, that's right.
Around the same
That's right.
time.
Yeah,
Around the same time.
yeah, in the same weekend.
Yeah.
But yeah. You had mentioned about doing an episode about the Main Event Mafia, and I was like, look, I think, in my opinion, the episode of TNA where they take over the Main Event Mafia takes over, is one of the most unintentionally funny episodes of any wrestling show of all time.
Yeah. It was like a podcast before podcasts were like mainstream. And
Right.
it's just like
Yeah.
Kevin Nash and Booker T just having so much fun, and sometimes Scott Steiner.
Oh my
And
God.
whoever made Scott Steiner, like they said he should be the ring announcer, I want to give them full praise.
Yes, please. Yes, please. Oh my God. Just the start of it. White trash and rednecks. It's like, yes, this is gonna be great. This is good. This is perfect.
The best was like the Andrew Thomas thing, because like Booker T was facing off against the refs. It's like he has two first names. I don't know why. Just like,
Man, it's got two first names. I don't know why.
I
And the fact when he's on commentary and he doesn't realize that the ropes are red, he's like, hey, he's like, I like his boots. His boots are red. Yeah, so are the ropes. I never realized that.
my headcanon is they never tell Scott Steiner anything about the
No,
show. And they're like,
just let him
yeah,
go.
it's like he's not gonna read the script. Just let him do what he wants to do. Like it's like it's kind of like they placate him. And just like, all right, here
Oh,
you go. And it's just like
dude.
it's really is amazing because you have this all-timer group with all-time guys. You have Kurt Angle, Kevin Nash, Sting, Booker T, Scott Steiner. We have
Hmm.
some extras floating around that I'm sure we're gonna get into because they're a
Right.
part of some good and not so good moments of TNA history.
For sure, yeah.
But the whole story that this concocted, where I don't think a lot of people realize, like the story of the Main Event Mafia was a slow burn, and that doesn't really happen within wrestling, at least mainstream wrestling nowadays, where it's
Right.
like you're building up to this faction moment.
Hmm.
And with the Main Event Mafia, they started the day after Bound for Glory, and this is when they were like right off the press, Sting, turn heel. And of course, Sting turning heel is not exactly, it feels weird. It's like saying Ricky Steamboat as a heel,
Yeah,
where
yeah.
it's just like, are the fans going to accept him as a heel and stuff? But how this group came together is Sting felt like guys like Samoa Joe, AJ Styles were disrespecting the legends because at that time, Samoa Joe beat Kurt Angle and he was having a very heated feud with Booker T. And
Hmm.
then, like, AJ Styles also was having a heated feud with Kurt Angle, and Sting thought they were taking it too far. Like, Sting just thought, hey, when I was back in my day, I would just
Right.
beat the guys, like, and then after that, boom, I'm gone. Hit the
Hmm.
showers, I'm good. And he thought this generation was taking it too far. When the other heels, you had Samoa Joe, who was tied with Kevin Nash at that time, and then Kevin Nash like turned on Joe, and like I think at one point Nash was like Kurt Angle's therapist like a year before.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that was right. Yeah, he was playing like the therapist role, like because that was around the time I think a little after him, like doing the stuff with like the X Division,
I
like the
love
Paparazzi
I love the
Express.
paparazzi stuff so
Oh,
much.
Oh my God. Jimmy Rave and Alex Shelley just being complete dorks
Yeah.
for Kevin Nash. It's so good. I love it.
And then like Kevin Nash had the graphics like, as you see my run as champion like eclipsed like Rock and Austin, and like, it's like this like
Just the inverted graph of the original.
it was just so funny. Uh,
Austin, Taker, they all buried it. I was on top, brother.
and it was like this whole dichotomy, at least at this time, where it's like people were afraid, at least when I was talking to like TNA fans at the time, were afraid that it was kind of turning into WCW-esque with, it's like, oh, they were from
Mhm.
WWE, we're bringing them in here. But before, it's like the names that, okay, we could see them in TNA, like Christian Cage was the first one. And then you had Kurt Angle,
Mhm.
which was the big one. And then
Yeah.
starting around the time where Booker T came in, I think a lot of people were being like, there's a lot of WCW in here.
Mhm.
So, what was your thoughts about like all these guys that were coming in, like from Christian Cage all the way to Booker T and people in the middle, like in this era, this 2008 era of TNA?
Yeah, like I I originally watched this like coming back into wrestling. Like I had a real lapse between like the invasion
Mhm.
is kind of like when I stopped, and I actually got back into it seeing like AJ Styles joining Bullet Club.
Mm,
So I went back after that and like watched all of like the OG TNA stuff.
mm,
So I'm kind of seeing it in like a little bit of like in like hindsight, I
mhm,
guess, in a way. But when with Christian Cage, I really dug it.
mm.
I was like, he fit.
Yeah.
Like at that time, like in his career, he just fit the TNA mold.
Mhm.
And like they did a lot with Christian. The whole like with the Christian coalition with him, Tomko and AJ Styles was hilarious. Loved
Love
that.
the group.
Yeah, so good. So good. And if you know, now you know. Um, so good. But like, yeah, I get that. It started to turn into like kind of WCW light with bringing in like, like Nash and Booker T and everything. It kind of did feel a little weird. So when they put together the main event Mafia, it's like, at first it's like, it's all these old WCW guys and Kurt Angle.
Yeah.
Like it's all these old WCW guys and a guy that was, one of the biggest stars in WWE
Mhm.
that jumped ship.
Mhm.
So it's like at first you're like, how are they gonna pull this off and not be like, not shoot themselves in the foot kind of immediately?
Right.
And I think for that first bit, they did very, very well with it.
Yeah.
I really liked it.
Yeah. Let's talk about that first bit because, you have Night After Bound for Glory, you have Kurt Angle, who was the Godfather, who was the
Mm-hmm.
leader. You had Sting, who was the world champion. You had Nash, you had Scott Steiner, who later came in. You had Booker T, who was the Legends champion, or about to christen himself the Legends champion.
Yeah.
And of course, you have Charmel, you have Jenna Maraska from Survivor, you have Rocco and
Mm.
Sally Boy, Kurt Angle's personal security
The
before
security
before
guards.
J
Yeah.
and J security. We had
Mm-hmm.
Rocco and Sally Boy, but there are clear comparisons, since we were talking about WCW, between the Millionaires Club and the New Blood Angle.
Right. Yeah.
So it kind of felt like a spin-off of that. Now, were you watching WCW at that time period?
I was a diehard WCW guy.
Okay, so you know better than anybody about like the New Blood versus the Millionaires Club. Now,
Uh huh.
when you were watching this back on like the rewatch, were you seeing the comparisons, or do you think TNA had enough of a spin where it could be a little bit more different than that one?
I definitely saw it at first. I was like, "Hey, I've seen this before.
Mhm.
Like, I know this guy.
Mhm.
Like I've seen this." But with I think just with the level of talent that TNA had, it felt a lot different
Mhm.
because you had like AJ Styles, Consequences,
Mhm.
Creed, like Bully, and the Dudleys
Mhm.
were in there too. Team 3D. So and the almost turn of the Dudleys at one
That
point
was a good segment.
kind of got me
Yeah.
because I was like, when they brought him out, I was like, oh no, I didn't want to see heel Dudleys.
Mhm.
I didn't want to see heel Team 3D. But and then he starts taking off the jacket and he shows him the baton, like,
Mhm.
grab it. We're about to get these dudes.
Mhm.
I was like, perfect. It was perfectly done. But yeah, I definitely, like I said, yeah, do see the comparisons, but I think TNA did it a little bit
Yeah,
better.
and speaking of the Dudley one for the Team 3D, like false turn of the main event Mafia, that reminded me of that one segment where it was them and RTC were convincing the
Oh,
Dudleys to come to their
yeah,
group, and then
right.
and then it was like take off of that. So it seemed like a tribute of a lot of old ideas
Hmm.
that were enhancing newer talent and newer storylines, which I think why the main event Mafia worked for at least the first half that we're getting to
Yeah,
is that the intention was we're trying to build new stars the correct way, or trying to, where New
yeah,
Blood and the Millionaires Club, nobody was really, I hate using the term over, but no one was really standing out from the pack of the New Blood to take on the
yeah, for
Millionaires
sure.
Club. And the Millionaires Club, that's where a lot of the interest was in.
Hmm.
So it just kind of like seemed very like off, where it's like you just built everybody around these like names that were millionaires, but you didn't establish like the other guys that were just kind of like the bit players up to that point.
Right, because it's like you've got everybody that's in the Millionaires Club. You got like it was like DDP and like all the top names, and then you have like natural born
Yeah,
thrillers
Billy Kidman.
going against Billy Kidman. You know what I mean? Like love me some Billy Kidman,
Yeah,
but like him being like face of the company at that time kind of thing, like is he the type of guy to push there? I don't
I
know.
want to live in an alternate reality where like WCW is still going and Billy Kidman is like the face of the company.
Billy Kidman being like a 3-time world heavyweight champion. I want to see that timeline.
With
I'm
the
really interested
jorts,
in
the
that.
tank top, everything like that.
But with big gold around
Oh
his
my god! And
waist.
it's like taking over his waist. It's like almost up to like his chest.
Oh, it's like the crown jewel belt.
Oh my
It's
god!
like
Yeah.
it's like the size of the crown jewel belt. It'd be like up to his neck.
Oh my goodness gracious! That would be a wild sight. But
Oh
world
my
champion
god,
Billy
yes.
Kidman's gonna go on my 2K later. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, that's
Yes.
what's gonna happen. I actually picked up 2K25 the other day for
Oh,
PS4.
nice.
Haven't had any crashes like everybody's been saying, so I'm not sure if it's like,
Yeah, I've been hearing a lot of people having issues with
yeah,
it, and I don't know.
yeah, like I did my Rise, and then everyone's like, "Oh, I can't play it." I'm like, "I played it fine."
It must be operator error at
Yeah,
that
maybe
point. You
it's
know what I mean?
because my intentions are pure of putting Billy Kidman as world champion. That's why it's working for me.
I'm so glad I'm putting that out into the universe.
I'm gonna be like the rest of the day is like committed to like creating the perfect Billy Kidman call. I'm like I'm the first one to do the 2K25 Billy Kidman. But we got the main event Mafia, and the goal of the Mafia is to make every TNA star respect him, because it's the young guys. It's like they've had it good for too long. It's like the inmates are running the asylum, and now the main event Mafia is coming to just retrain the industry in their own image. And Kurt Angle credits Kevin Nash for this idea, because it's like you have all these different players, like you said, it's WCW main eventers featuring Kurt Angle. And it was such an interesting combo, because Kurt Angle at that time period, you could definitely make a case that he was the best in the world at
Yeah.
in ring, and
Hmm.
in character he was the guy for TNA for such a long time, where he wasn't really the guy in WWE.
Right.
And I think a lot of people around this time were getting Kurt Angle fatigue a little bit when it
Mm,
comes to a character basis, because it's like he started as a babyface, and then up to that point like he was babyface for a couple months, and he's just been a straight heel you know
right. Right.
So, how did you feel about Kurt Angle creating this group when he's already seemingly feuded with everybody in TNA? Did you think it was just kind of like, we're just going to put a different hat on this story and see if it connects with the audience? Or did you really think it's like, okay, this is going to be like where we're going to the next level when it comes to the new TNA stars?
Right. Yeah. I kind of did feel a little bit that I was just like, you know, throwing stuff at the wall and see what sticks a little bit.
Right.
Cause like I was used to seeing like goofy heel Kurt
Hmm.
Angle, like all the stuff in WWE.
Yeah.
Like I was used to that. but I was like, I don't know about this like serious heel thing with him.
Mm,
Like it didn't really like click with me at first.
mhm,
It took me about a couple of weeks to be like, oh, okay. All right. This is starting to work. This is starting to pick up steam a little bit.
mhm.
So yeah, like I said, I didn't really click with it at first. I kind of thought it was just, them just kind of throwing stuff on there being like, "Oh, well, this is new
Mhm,
for Kurt. Let's see if this works. If it doesn't, oh, well, we'll scrap this and we'll figure something out with him."
mhm.
But yeah, it turned out, like I said, like we were talking earlier, the first half of it was some of the best stuff in TNA, in my opinion.
I agree, and you have like so many like great diverse talents. You had Kurt Angle, like we established. Kevin Nash was always good in a supporting role. I think
Yeah.
like he was a very good person to work off of, like the X Division stuff, like we were mentioning before.
Mhm.
Just being like that additive like voice. And I think he's
Yeah.
like a very underrated performer in this time in the sense of being a good character and being that
Yeah.
connection towards everybody. Because if you think about it, Kevin Nash at that time in TNA was the common connection between everyone in that group.
Yeah.
Like with
He definitely was.
Sting, with Kurt, with Steiner, with Booker. Like he was like that common thread that really brought everyone together.
He was kind of the real glue that held everything together a
Yeah.
little bit. And like we were mentioning before we went on air, that I was watching the complete history of the Main Event Mafia on TNA to kind of refresh myself for this.
Mhm.
And yeah, his character work in this is incredible.
Yeah.
Like you can definitely tell that he's leaning into his acting chops a lot
Mhm.
in this, and it's incredible.
Yeah.
Like, just talking about some of the different moments that they have, like, which I'm pretty sure we'll talk about later,
Yeah.
the empty arena match,
Mhm.
like his work in that at the end when they're pulling each other apart,
Mhm.
or like when they finally get Sting out of the Main Event Mafia,
Mm.
the promo he hits talking about when they're bringing up their kids
Yeah.
and stuff like that, just incredible
Yeah.
stuff.
I really enjoyed that promo when they kicked out Sting because
Hmm.
like for whatever reason, when I think about it, where Kevin Nash is like, "It ain't working, man. It ain't working," because like
Yeah.
Sting's intentions were pure. Get the young
Hmm.
guys to respect the veterans, but like
Yeah.
Sting's way wasn't working for that current iteration of the
Yep.
Mafia.
Yep.
But then it's like, yeah, it's Scott Steiner, who again like played his role to a T, and that's probably his second most viral clip. You have the first one where it's like
The
Steiner math.
the Steiner
And then
math
there's
stuff. Yeah.
that sit down interview with Mike Tenay where he just
Oh
calls
my,
Samoa Joe fat.
this fat son of a bitch. Like, it's dude, it's so good. He just starts when he starts going and he starts losing control of his words. It's almost like Don Vito on Beavis and Bam, like it's amazing. They're like, yo, calm down. He's fat.
I,
Like, it's like
I feel like Scott Steiner, like the wrestler, is like if you took a meathead and you crossbreeded him with Yosemite Sam from Looney Tunes.
yes, that is a perfect description of Scott
Yeah,
Steiner.
and it's just like it gets like so like unhinged in the best possible way. And also speaking of unhinged, you have Booker T, who
Oh.
depending on the day, Booker T can show up as like in TNA Booker T. He could show
Mm-hmm.
up as like the most serious performer, or like
Mm-hmm.
you see this guy and it's like you get the perception of like, oh, he's like does not care. But it's like you're not sure if he does not care in like the best way or like the worst way.
Yeah, exactly. You get like dead serious Booker T, or you get I'm Black Snow. Like it's one of the two. There's no difference in between. It's either on or off. Like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, but again, with a good villain stable, you need good heroes to bounce off of. And this is where the
Yes.
TNA Frontline comes in, which I
Mm.
voted as one of the worst theme songs I've ever heard in my entire life.
Whoo, it's
It
rough.
is it is like we need a jingle. We need a
we
jingle
need
for these
we
guys.
need a jingle. What do you got? I don't know. I got some
Yeah,
throwaway
yeah,
stuff
yeah. We
back
got
here.
Butt Rock number 13.
Generic dad
Yeah.
rock number 36. This will work for you guys. There you go.
So to put this in perspective, this is 2009 TNA on Spike TV, and it
Mm.
was the definition of bumper Spike TV music, where it's like if
Oh
you
yeah.
thought like Axe body spray, Quizno subs, and you mix that with 1,000 Ways to Die as a song, like that was the TNA Frontline theme.
That is so true. It's literally just if you could make a musical variant of everything on Spike TV that isn't TNA,
Yeah.
that's what you get the frontline music.
Eh,
Yeah, I had to listen to it earlier. I was just like, because I remember I heard the Main Event Mafia one, and I was just like, oh, I forgot what their theme song was, and I never heard the Frontline one. I was like, wait, what is this? So I had to go back and look for it, and I was like, oh yeah, I remember this
I'm
now.
like, this is why this
Ooh,
group did not work out for the long run.
no,
So, so,
not at all.
so with the front line, you had AJ Styles, you had Samoa Joe, you had Team 3D who come in later. You have
Mhm.
pretty much all the young guys. Like pretty much it was Samoa Joe, AJ Styles, and the X Division.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
And the only like interesting thing for me with the frontline dynamic was the Motor City Machine Guns because they
Oh
were like
yeah,
heels in the front line,
yeah,
but it's like they were like kind of like kicking and screaming, saying it's like, oh, we don't want to defend TNA. Like
yeah.
TNA's not booking us. Why do we want to help TNA?
Right. Yeah, they're not giving us any dates.
Yeah.
Why? Why? Like we're just sitting back and catering. Come on, dude. Like,
Yeah, and it's like the TNA frontline kind of had the same problem the New Blood had with it
mm,
just being here are all the young guys thrown together, and we're trying to elevate everyone at once instead of picking one, two, maybe three names that we could elevate during this time period. Now,
mhm.
on your rewatch, did you feel that way with the TNA frontline? Because off the top of everybody's head, I don't think people can name any other frontline member unless you're like a diehard TNA fan
Yeah.
that's not named AJ Styles and Samoa Joe.
Yeah, it's like you've got the only other one that I can remember off the top of my head right now is Consequences Creed.
Yeah, like Petey Williams was there for a
Petey
while.
Williams, yes. Yes, I remember that now because when they did the reveal for Steiner,
Yeah,
when they're like, watch out for the five,
yeah,
and then he comes in, he never attacks Petey
yeah.
Williams.
That was the big thing because they had like the Scott Steiner and Little Petey Pump at the time,
Yeah.
and that was like a cool dynamic where it's just like they start. I wish they did this more, just with not this storyline, just storylines in general, just like shades of gray when it comes to like character relationships, and they started doing that now with WWE with the whole Seth Rollins Roman Reigns relationship
Right.
and just like kind of devolving from
Mm.
there. But you had some complicated relationships like Sting's relationships with the Main Event Mafia because Sting wasn't the guy who was formulating like the beatdown stuff, and then
Mhm.
you had Scott Steiner and Petey Williams, like we were saying, and then you have the evolution of the AJ Styles Sting relationship. So there were like a couple of things there that were really interesting. Was there any like particular relationship that we haven't touched on during this whole Main Event Mafia storyline that really stood out to you?
Hmm. Like this, like kind of stuff with like Sting and Jarrett,
Mhm.
Sting and Foley, because there was a couple times in there where it was during the feud of Sting and Kurt Angle
Mhm.
while they were still in the Main Event Mafia.
Right.
They keep bringing up, that like two times Foley's raised your
Mhm.
hand. Where do you stand? Kind of thing. There's that. I'm trying to think of some other ones that we haven't really touched on.
Like there
Um,
was the Foley and the machine guns, and
yeah,
that was a big one where the machine guns were just being disrespectful, and Foley is like, "You got to take this serious," and then it's
yeah.
like he would just like yell at Alex Shelley because his son really liked Alex Shelley, which I thought was really funny.
my kid really likes you, so I'm gonna pick on you
Yeah,
all the
yeah. So
time.
I was reading like Countdown to Lockdown, which was his book, and I was like
Oh
reading
yeah.
it, and it's like his son had like a faux hawk like Alex Shelley, and he's like,
Oh,
"Look, Dad, I
that's
look like Alex Shelley," and like the amount of heartbreak that I was reading through these pages, and I was just like, man, like this is this is
oh,
connecting to because the Machine Guns were my favorite tag team of all time, and they still are because
right,
I
yeah.
love them so much. So I'm like, oh, at least they're doing
Mhm.
something with them. But we brought up Mick
Yeah.
Foley, and Mick Foley came from WWE, jumped to
Mhm.
TNA, and he
Right.
pretty much kind of took over the frontline leadership in a weird way.
Yeah, he kinda, like, just kinda shoehorned himself in
Yeah, and I
a
was just
little
kind of
bit.
like, this feels like a very like different vibe when it began. Like, what was your thoughts on Mick Foley being inserted as? Because he wasn't like the general manager, I don't think, but he was like in that kind of like commissioner role.
Yeah. Yeah, kinda like a commissioner thing. I think it was just kind of like a watered down version of what he did as, like, commissioner in WWE,
Yeah,
and even more kind of breaking it down. like the machine gun stuff was almost like a TNA version of what he would do with like Edge and Christian.
Yeah, that's I think the vibe they were trying to go for.
Yeah, because that was what I initially caught when I did like start watching TNA. I was just like, oh, that's another one where like I know that guy.
Yeah.
I've seen that guy before. You
Yeah.
know?
I just like we've said like all these like cool segments where it's
Mhm.
or like these ideas where it's like, oh, they did this before.
Yeah, yeah. They went back to the well for this
Yeah, I'm
one.
just like Coca-Cola, RC Cola.
Oh, hey, I know you.
Pokemon, Digimon.
Shimon.
Oh.
Transformers GoBots. Oh,
Legos, Mega Blocks.
Mega
Mega Blocks. So there was like a lot of like cool ideas that were going on, but now like we have Mick Foley, who's kind of like front and center. Like they had like a couple of like matches with Sting and AJ for the TNA Championship. I think they had one with Rhino, who was also part of the front line too.
yeah. Rhino was in there too.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's right.
so it's like you had some TNA originals in there.
Mhm.
So or people consider TNA originals, but like WWE like legends as well. So
Right. Yeah.
but the big first one that was like the first shot in this main event Mafia storyline was when Booker T retained his Legends Championship over Christian Cage. And at the time, Christian Cage was rumored to going back to WWE, and they played into that story. And then
Mm,
Christian Cage was on the receiving end of the main event Mafia beatdown, which was the last time we saw him in TNA for years upon years.
right.
Now, do you think that was the best way to utilize Christian as he was on his way out of TNA?
I genuinely think so.
Mhm,
Like, I think that was probably a really good way to write him out of the company.
mhm,
Because it's like you got there's a faction there with the world champion
mhm.
in there. So if you're gonna do something that's gonna get you, out and back to WWE, why not do it with the top faction in the company
Right.
kind of thing? And because they were teasing trying to get him into the main event mafia at one point,
Yeah.
correct? Yeah. So teasing into that and then having the beatdown be the end. I think that was a great way to get him out of
Yeah, because Christian was like performing as like the true neutral at one point, and
that.
then like it was kind of like leaning towards the front line, but then he lost with Booker, and then it's like, oh, you're a part of the main event Mafia, and then they just
Yeah.
beat down Christian Cage to be like, all right, you did your job, you elevated this group. Christian Cage was like a loyal name within TNA, and now this new group is more established than ever. And with
Mhm.
Mick Foley coming into the company, of course, we're building up to his first match, and I described this match, I believe it was at Genesis, and it was a 6-man. And the best way I could describe it is like if you like again 2K, you put the random generator on, and like this is the match you get. So it was Mick Foley, Devon, and AJ Styles versus I believe Booker T, Scott Steiner, and it was
And
supposed to be Kevin Nash, but then he got a staph infection, so he was replaced by Cute Kip of
oh
the
yeah,
Beautiful
they brought
People.
Billy Gunn. They brought Billy Gunn in for randomly.
Yeah,
Like
like it's like oh, it's gonna be Billy Gunn, and then Billy Gunn came out. Did you think it was a missed opportunity for Cute Kip to be a part of the main event Mafia?
I'm kind of glad that Cute Kip didn't get into the main event mafia because that would have been the jump the shark moment for me, I
Yeah,
think.
it would only be
If they
like
would have.
month 4.
Yeah, dude, you've been like a third of the way through the year, and all of a sudden, yeah, let's throw the beautiful people in here and let's just see what happens. Like, no, man, like no, let him keep the weird chaps and hang out with Angelina Love.
And
Like,
there's that one guy who's like, wait, let him cook.
no, wait, 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 wait,
Wait,
wait, wait, wait.
this could be good.
He's on to something here.
This is the Billy Gunn push we want.
Billy, I could just imagine Cute Kip in the main event Mafia now, and I'm like, I kind of do want to see it just out of morbid
Like
curiosity.
suit pants, but as chaps and like just like
Yeah, it's just like the suit, but he still has like the chap
yeah.
cutouts in the pants.
So
Oh, beautiful.
yeah, so we're getting like knee deep in this whole main event Mafia angle where it's like they're terrorizing TNA. We're trying to get something started with the front line, but of course, with things being like how they are, they start kind of pivoting towards Foley and Jarrett being the top guys of the babyface side. Now, do
Yeah.
you think that kind of hindered the frontline portion of the angle just because it's like you have these established names who a lot of people who've been watching wrestling for a while are like, oh, they're just doing a feud with Jarrett, Foley, and then Angle and all these other guys from WCW. Do you think that hurt
Hmm.
the angle, or did you think their endorsement was more of we're going to try to elevate the young guys as best we can, but it's like we're still kind of the focus?
I think they had like good intention
Mhm.
to bring up the young guys, but it just kind of ended up just naturally going to it being, Main Event Mafia versus Foley and Jarrett.
Yeah.
And then with like kind of in hindsight, the outside of TNA stuff
Hmm.
with Jarrett and Kurt Angle kind of made it naturally, I guess, kind of go that way
Hmm.
to where they were the focus of it. And plus, like Jarrett being the owner of TNA, it's kind of like, oh, great, the Booker's putting himself over
Oh,
kind of
we'll
thing.
get to him.
Oh yeah, we'll get there. All right.
We'll let him cook for a little bit.
Yeah,
Well, let him cook for just a little bit,
just a little.
again, there was like a big holding pattern for a little bit for the Main Event Mafia, where it's like, okay, establishing dominance, all this
Mhm.
kind of thing. Sting kind of being that neutral party within the Main Event Mafia, being the World Heavyweight Champion. And the next big story with the Main Event Mafia and Sting was uh, Sting defending his World Championship against Mick Foley inside Lethal Lockdown.
Mm,
And this is where the stereotype of TNA is like you leave WWE and you immediately get championships come from a little bit.
yeah.
Now, Foley came to TNA in September, which again, and lockdowns in March, April, that kind of area. So
Hmm.
it's like all right, cool. You at least you waited a little bit, but
Right.
it's still Mick Foley who's retired and unretired a lot of times
Hmm.
where it doesn't really paint the picture or in a good light that you have Mick Foley defeating Sting for the world championship when it's supposed to be the story's supposed to be about elevating the young talent. So what was your
Exactly.
thoughts about the Mick Foley Sting feud? Because like a lot of the promos was great, like Mick Foley interviewing Cactus Jack I really enjoyed.
Yes.
And just like that kind of like dichotomy. Like what was your thoughts on that feud overall?
Like honestly, it almost, from an outside perspective, it almost seems like, okay, we're desperate to get people to watch the show.
Hmm.
Let's put, we've already got, Sting is world champion.
Hmm.
Let's put this guy that everybody knows and loves. Like it's hard for people to find a bad thing to say about Mick Foley. So they're like, let's put him, let's put him in here for this
Right.
because like we have all this young talent, but we're it's Mick Foley.
Hmm.
That's gonna put asses in seats. That's what they're, at least what I think they were thinking.
Hmm. And this lockdown match had like this was the only like escape the cage kind of lockdown match because the finish
Right.
was like they were both climbing the cage at the same time and they both drop almost simultaneously. Just Foley hit
Mhm.
first,
Right.
so it's like okay, this is a interesting direction giving Mick Foley the world championship, which turned out to be his longest world title run within
Which is
them.
so weird to say,
Yeah,
you know.
and we'll get to his run in a bit because it just like it's an odd run, but at the same
Hmm.
pay per view, Lethal Lockdown, you had Team Jarrett again, Jarrett,
Yeah. Jarrett.
defeating the Main Event Mafia in Lethal Lockdown, which is like all right, cool, you're building up to a War Games type of matchup, but again, it's
Hmm.
Jarrett that's on the marquee. Like you still had
Right.
AJ, Samoa Joe, and Christopher Daniels on the team, but
Hmm.
it was still Jarrett that was promoted as that lead guy, which kind of diminished the impact of the front line. So, do you
Mm.
think it's like again we're at the point where it's like we've deviated from the initial mission of elevating the young talent?
I think so. If they would have kept it as, frontline versus main event mafia and not put Jarrett's name on it, I think it would have come across a little bit better.
Hmm.
But the fact that they had to, Jeff's got to put himself over
Hmm.
kind of just like, yeah, it's like, yeah, we're building you guys up, but I'm the I'm the star here
Yeah.
in this, which is absolutely ridiculous given the three guys that you're in there with, who arguably, in my opinion, have the greatest triple threat match of all time.
Yeah. It's one of the ones that people point to where it's like you'll have people who point to Rollins, Lesnar, Cena. You have people point Benoit, HBK, Triple H, but like that triple threat match at Unbreakable was like amazing. And the fact that AJ Styles came out recently on the Chris Van Vliet podcast
Yeah,
and saying he's like, oh yeah, we skipped a spot and the whole last 10 minutes was like improvised. Well, I'm just like,
that's
that's insane.
it's exactly like that's hard enough to do in a one-on-one
Yeah.
match. Then you have another guy in here
Yeah.
that you have to work in all these spots, and you guys miss something and go home early.
Mhm.
Like that's wild
Yeah,
to me.
yeah, and that just kind of shows the trust they had in each other as performers, friends, and again another big thing, like because Jarrett was the one who was promoting these guys, like in his promo, saying people like AJ Styles, people like Samoa Joe. It became a meme at one point where it's like every promo of Jarrett talking up the young guys, it's like people like AJ Styles, people like Samoa Joe, and I'm just kind of like, you got other people on the roster here.
There's a lot of people. You got James Storm back there. You got Bobby Roode back there. Like you got a lot of people back there that you can talk to. But no, it's these guys.
It's
Just these three.
these guys right over here.
Yeah, these three gentlemen right here. Yeah. Not, y'all just work here and collect a check. But these three right here,
Mhm.
like it's crazy.
It is it's pretty wild with everything, all things considered, but we have to talk about at least some dissension within the main
Hmm.
event mafia,
Yes.
because again I kind of jumped the gun, with the whole lockdown thing. I was just so excited about Mick Foley winning the TNA championship. Long Island guy, gotta support
Listen,
my guy.
listen. I will do anything for
Yeah.
McFoley. Like I love the man to death.
But around like the springtime, that's where Sting and Kurt Angle were having their tiff. You know what I mean? Where it's
Hmm.
like the visions between the leadership was getting muddied.
Hmm.
Now, how did you feel about the Sting Kurt Angle relationship? Because they had a previous match at Bound for Glory for the World Championship. They had that feud throughout
Hmm.
the year prior. Now, how did you feel about Sting and Kurt Angle, with Kurt being the Godfather, who was the leader of the Main Event Mafia, and Sting being the world
Hmm.
champion? Did you feel like that was a cool dynamic, or did you think it's being like, well, Sting's the world champion, why isn't he the leader?
I thought it was a cool dynamic, like because it's like, oh, okay, the world champion isn't the like face of the group,
Hmm.
which I thought was like really interesting. But I was like, okay, this smells like dissension down the line,
Hmm.
like right out of the gate.
Yeah,
So when they finally decided to feud, like I'm a diehard Sting guy,
yeah,
like through and through. Like if I hadn't have found Sting when I was 6 years old, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now. But and it's like my all-time favorite wrestler and arguably one of the greatest wrestlers of all time.
right.
So I know whenever they start going, it's gonna be it's gonna be gold. So I was fully dialed in when the dissension started because I was like, oh, okay,
Mm.
let's see where they go with this and see how things play out.
Yeah, I really did enjoy that dynamic between Kurt Angle and Sting.
Mhm.
I think it would have been more effective if we haven't seen it like a little bit recently, because then it was kind of like feeling
Mhm.
like that. Like I remember there was like a paradox of just like John Cena, Randy Orton, Triple H, Edge, like in every single
Uh,
pay per view, where it was just
mhm.
like it was one of those combinations, and maybe you'll throw Taker and Shawn in there, and it's like, all right, I'm a little bit fatigued with everything right now,
Yeah.
because
It's like I understand long-term booking, but like you guys are doing this too much. Let's stir it up a
let's
little bit.
spread it out a little bit.
Mhm.
And with Kurt Angle and Sting, you had two guys that were like alphas in different ways. And
Mhm.
the big thing that I think kind of hurt the storyline with like this was probably when it jumped the shark in terms of like the TNA Frontline being a thing, because this was the pay-per-view,
Mhm.
Sting versus Kurt Angle. You had the empty arena match like we were talking about before. about the dissension. Now the Main Event Mafia is feuding with each other and
Right.
not the front line. So it's like you could
Yeah.
afford to feud with each other because the front line isn't the threat. That's how my brain was working at the time.
Oh no, you're definitely right. You're definitely right with that one because it's like you guys are such a non-factor right now. We're gonna fight amongst ourselves
Yeah.
and not have any issues outside of this.
Yeah. And so Sting retains his world championship, and then he loses the Foley at Lockdown. And then
Mhm.
comes the most TNA match main event that I've ever seen in my life. So it's the Ultimate Sacrifice Fatal 4-Way match. Now,
Mm.
concept I think is very interesting. So it's a Fatal 4-Way match where everything, like somebody like puts something up for grabs. Where Mick Foley's putting up his world championship, Jeff Jarrett's putting up his stake in TNA as owner, Kurt Angle's putting his spot as the godfather of the Main Event Mafia, and Sting's putting up his career. So another career career match
Right.
up there.
Yeah.
But the caveat is not all those things are on the line, but it's only whoever gets pinned, that's what they lose, and the winner gains that.
Right.
So in this case, Sting pinned Kurt Angle during that match. So he wins the Godfather leadership in the Main Event Mafia, but then Mick Foley still retains his championship. Jarrett's still the owner. So it's one of
Yeah.
those things. It's like we're putting all these stipulations up there, and then you're gonna have to try to follow along how this is gonna work in the end. Because I remember watching it live, and I was like confused. I'm like, so is Sting like everything? But then you see Mick Foley happily cradling the championship, and I'm just kind of
Yeah.
like, okay, so he's still champion. Jarrett's not very happy. Like it's like again
Yeah.
focusing the dynamics of the Main Event Mafia, which
Yeah.
is
It was almost like they put too many things at once.
Mhm.
Like if you're gonna do a 4-way, put one of the steps in there.
Yeah.
Like for the title, you could have do a fatal 4-way with like Sting, Angle, Nash, Booker T. Whoever wins this runs the Main Event Mafia.
Yeah.
Like it's almost like they were like, okay, we have all these ideas for stipulation matches,
Mhm.
but we don't have enough time on the card, so we're just going to put everything into one match.
Mhm.
And it was confusing. It was very confusing to
Mhm.
watch.
And speaking of confusing, we're gonna go to one of the most confusing repackages during this time period. So Samoa Joe, again, co-leader of the front line.
Yes.
Again, his booking within TNA was always very strange because it felt like they put the world title on him too soon, like or not too soon,
Mm-hmm.
too late, I should say.
Right. Yeah.
Because it's just kind of like Kurt Angle defeated him like 50 million times, and then he finally won at Lockdown 2008 in that cool
Mm-hmm.
MMA hybrid sort of match.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And then, like he had the poofy hair. He was like still kind of chill, and then the Main Event Mafia took him out, and then he comes back as the Nation of Violence Samoa Joe.
Mm.
And I was confused because a nation is usually many people. Samoa Joe is one person.
Just one guy.
He's one guy is a nation, and
Yeah.
he had like a machete. He had like a mysterious advisor that he would talk to. He had like the face paint.
Yeah, the crazy
Yeah,
Mike Tyson-esque tattoo, but like giant
yeah.
tribal face paint
And
thing.
one of the first matches I remember because we were talking about the Lethal Lockdown match with Team Jarrett, Jarrett and Man
Yeah.
of Mafia.
Mhm.
And Samoa Joe actually won the right to captain that team, but he foregoed that leadership because he didn't want to be a leader. Where I'm like, okay, that's weird. But he won that
Yeah.
in a 30-man gauntlet match inside a steel cage.
TNA.
like like that
TNA.
was a lot. Like I didn't even mention that in the worst of TNA. There's so many things that they did where I'm just
Oh,
at that time looking back, I'm just like tilting my head more than I do during my videos. You know?
dude, it's some of the stuff that company did in the early days of TNA, just wow.
Yeah.
Just wow.
Yeah. So what do you think about this Samoa Joe like repackage?
If he didn't have the weird tribal face paint thing, it would have been perfect.
Mhm.
Because that's what I want out of Samoa Joe.
Mhm.
Just ruthless killer in the ring. And teaming him up with who he gets teamed up with as his advisor,
Mhm.
not a better choice could have been made putting Taz with Samoa
Yeah, it
Joe.
made a lot of sense too, because it's like
Mm-hmm.
you go like through different eras. You're like, oh, that pairing makes sense. You know, Taz was a judo guy. Samoa Joe would do a lot of judo-esque movements in the ring as well, and
Mm-hmm.
Samoa Joe just kind of updated that style that
Mm-hmm.
Taz pretty much foregoed that long time ago. But we have to fast forward to Slammiversary, and of course, when you're in Slammiversary, you always have to go King of the Mountain. So it's a King of the Mountain
Oh,
match, which is the
God.
infamous reverse ladder match. So for your newer fans who don't know what the King of the Mountain match is,
Mm.
it's a reverse ladder match, but you can't climb the ladder and hang the championship until you get a pinfall or submission on somebody, and then that person goes in the penalty box for 2 minutes. Which I'm like, all right, like it's a lot of moving parts, but I'm like, I could follow it along a little bit. Like I feel like NXT kind of perfected the penalty box thing with the Iron Survivor Challenge,
Yes. Yes.
but this was like we're gonna combine three different gimmicks into one.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
so the people in this match, it was Mick Foley, AJ Styles, Samoa Joe, Kurt Angle, and I want to say Jarrett was in this match as well.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly off the top of my head.
So I remember watching this match, and of course, I was enjoying because it's like AJ Styles. I know he was the TNA Legends champion at that time. He defeated Booker
Mm-hmm.
T. I'm like, oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's like they're gonna give AJ a good spot and stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm watching the match, and this is Kurt Angle, and this is like I call Kurt trying to grow his hair era. Like he was growing his hair out a little
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah, he had like it was like the buzz cut. It was almost like a Bruce Willis type
Yeah,
of
it was
like
like that's a perfect way to describe it. It was like a Bruce Willis type of cut.
Bruce Willis, Jason Statham type, just like it's like 5 o'clock shadow on his head
Yeah,
kind of deal.
yeah, and of course, of course, like Kurt Angle and Samoa Joe, they're on the top, and of course Sting he defeats Matt Morgan earlier in the show to prevent Morgan from going in the Main Event Mafia because Morgan wanted to go in the Main Event Mafia because why not? You haven't been in any main events, but you're good to get try to get.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, you'll get an opportunity. So
Yeah, yeah, you're not a future you're not a former world heavyweight champion in another company. Yeah, dude,
yeah,
whatever. Get in here.
yeah,
You're huge. Why
yeah.
not?
Why not? Go right ahead. Yeah, go right ahead, sport. So
Yeah.
Samoa Joe has the TNA Championship. Kurt Angle is up on the ladder, and Samoa Joe, Nation of Violence, again, one guy,
Mhm. Right. Right.
hands Kurt Angle the championship, and Kurt Angle then hangs the championship, and then you're left going off the air. Samoa Joe joining the Main Event Mafia, and the reasoning for this I find really funny because the reasoning is they just paid off Samoa Joe.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, that's really funny. Like it's like the Main Event Mafia were upset they couldn't beat Samoa Joe, so they just paid him off. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
wrestling angles would be so much simpler if it was just like, pay me, pay me so I can leave you alone.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, yeah, this guy's paying me this much. You match that, we won't have to do business no more.
Yeah,
Like I'll leave you alone forever.
yeah. So
Like
so what do you think about the Samoa Joe addition into the Main Event Mafia?
honestly, I was like, it made sense to me. Like, especially with like, him turning the way that he did, like the whole Nation of Violence thing. It's like, all right, this fits more with the Main Event Mafia.
Mhm.
So I loved it. I loved having Samoa Joe in there.
Yeah.
Um, if they were gonna like do the whole thing with getting Sting out,
Mhm.
it was cool to bring in Samoa Joe
Mhm.
to kind of even it out
Yeah.
a little bit.
And of course, with any twist in TNA, it's either going to be receptive, either good or bad.
Mm-hmm.
Which brings us to Victory Road 2009. And this is a very monumental show for a lot of reasons. For one, you know that Jeff Jarrett guy that we've been seeing a lot on TV?
That young
Yeah,
upstart Jeff
the young,
Jarrett.
young, great head of hair, Jeff Jarrett. Yeah, he's not going to be on TNA TV anymore because like Kurt Angle and Karen Angle were separated at that time.
Right.
But then, of course, personal things happen. Jeff Jarrett and Karen Angle start dating. He denies it to Dixie. Dixie finds out about it. There was somebody who called on like Bubba the Love Sponge claiming to be a TNA employee.
Yeah.
And like there were like a bunch of theories at that time, and someone threw out Christian Cage as somebody. I'm just like, that's such a weird, weird thing.
That's so
Like I
strange. Like,
remember that
why would
was
he do
like that
that?
was a big thing at that time, where it's like, oh, Jeff Jarrett held Christian down in TNA or something like that. I'm like,
Right.
all right, it's one of those like very very odd rumors, but anyway.
Yeah.
But I'm saying it right now just because of the ridiculousness of it. But like Jarrett pretty much is ousted from TNA, no longer the owner. He's like not a part of creative. We won't see him again for months. So everything that we've talked about Jared ended up being pointless.
Yeah. Literally for nothing
Yeah.
at all.
So they kind of pivoted because they were doing like a Mick Foley like heel turn leaning, but it's like Mick Foley later like had to be a babyface for this section of the Main Event Mafia story. And the reason why
Mhm.
this pay per view is so infamous is because it is probably voted one of the worst shows, pay per view shows of any company,
Mm.
because this was the Main Event Mafia clean sweep. And this is
Right.
what some people think of when it comes to Main Event Mafia. Like you had the TNA Tag Team Champions, Beer Money versus Booker T and Scott Steiner. And there
Mhm.
was a point in the match where the referee is crawling into the ring and James Storm is crawling into the ring, and they're both going at the same pace when theoretically James Storm should be a little
It
bit
should.
a
Yeah.
little bit more like speed, but he has to pretend he's slower than the referee, which led to the finish. And
Ugh.
then you had the mysterious advisor, of course, Samoa Joe and Taz. That partnership is revealed, and Samoa Joe defeats Sting. And then you had AJ Styles lose to Kevin Nash in the Legends Championship match. You had Kurt Angle win against Mick Foley. And of course, the match that everybody has been waiting for, Queen Charmel versus Jenna Maraska from Survivor.
Oh, Lord of mercy.
So, for those of you who don't know, the Main Event Mafia had some valets. Queen Charmel, of course, being Booker T's wife, and Jenna Maraska, who was Kevin Nash's friend. They never really expanded upon the relationship.
Yeah.
It was just like they were just friends, I guess. You know. And then, of course, TNA was like, this person won Survivor. Let's
Yeah.
let's have him have a a wrestling match against somebody who's not really proficient in the ring.
Who's two people not a trained wrestler. Charmel is in an evening gown and she is wrestling circles
Mhm.
around Jenna
Yeah,
Maraska in this
and
match.
it's like that. This is where the famous Ryan Alvarez -5 stars quote
Yes.
happens. So if you're wondering when people like say -5 stars, this is the match that popularized that phrase.
And it is I've never heard of a match more worthy of its rating
Mhm.
than this one.
Yeah.
Because whew, it is rough business. If
It
anybody out
lives
there
up to
tries
the
to
hype.
watch, yeah, it definitely lives up to the hype. If you want a good laugh, folks, try and find a way to watch that because whew,
Yeah.
it is crazy.
But
That
of course, with all that said and done, we have to talk about a sad moment in the Main Event Mafia story. Then that's Sting being kicked out. So, like
uh,
we said, Sting was he won the Godfather rights to lead the Main Event Mafia. So he's going to do things his way, and that was not really cool with everybody else. And he kicked out Rocco Sally Boy as personal security, and then Foley
mhm,
hired him as security, which I thought was pretty funny. Uh,
that was funny.
and then they kicked out, Charmel and Jenna Maraska because they were feuding, and of course that culminated into that lovely pay per view match. And then Sting trying to convince everybody like his way was the right way, and of course he gets beaten down. As Sting does, he always gets beaten down. It doesn't like I feel like Cody's taking that role now, where it's just like he just keeps getting beaten down by his friends.
Yeah.
But this is like Sting's version, but this time he was technically a heel, so I guess it's different. But how'd you feel about Sting being ousted
Mm,
of the Main Event Mafia? Did you think like this
mm.
was the point where it kind of jumped the shark, or do you think this is kind of like the beginning of that downturn?
This was definitely the beginning of the downturn because they with the whole bringing Matt Morgan
Mm-hmm.
involved. That's where things were like, all right, all right, this is I'm not into
Mm-hmm.
this. But Sting being out of it, it's like, oh, perfect. Like, the hero of TNA is finally kind of back.
Mm,
And I know he's gonna do great stuff with any of these guys. So I was much more, once that happened, it kind of was like, okay,
mm,
we're back to kind of, Sting is no longer a heel.
mm.
All is right in the world kind of thing.
Yeah,
Because yeah, like there's only been a few times in his career where he was ever a heel.
yeah,
And every time, except for like the main event mafia stuff, like every other time just didn't feel right,
yeah.
you know?
Like there was something came up on my feed, and it was like 10 years ago, like something like 10 or 15 years ago, maybe even longer. RVD debuted with TNA, and they showed the entire match of like Sting being a heel because he didn't trust Hogan, and then Van Dam just beats him in 90 seconds.
Like, come on, man. Like, what are we doing
And I'm being
here?
generous too with 90 seconds. It was a very quick man. It was like 30 seconds. I'm like, and I'm like looking at Van Dam. I'm like, that man probably got paid $10,000 to do
Uh-huh.
this.
Uh-huh.
But like the again, the straw that broke the camel's back with Sting's godfatherness of the main event mafia
Mm-hmm.
was Samoa Joe joining the fray. And of course,
Yeah.
Samoa Joe wins the X Division Championship because we can't have Samoa Joe in the main event anymore. Uh,
Yeah. Can't have him in the main event. Might as well give him the mid card title,
yeah,
you know what I
give
mean?
him that. Even though the weight limit was brought upon a year before, but again, it's not my company, not my problem.
Right.
But so now they're starting the story of like the rise of AJ Styles, which probably should have occurred a little bit sooner, but
Yeah, about 2 years too late on
yeah,
that, but
but yeah, better late than never.
right,
So it's
exactly.
like now the story kind of pivots to Sting trying to motivate AJ because then AJ's like, there's a story where he's like contemplating retirement, where it's just like he's like, I'm not sure if I have it anymore. I'm just like, you're AJ Styles, of course you have it.
Uh-huh.
And the main event mafia, in the meantime, forms a super group with the World Elite, which is Sheikh Abdul Bashir's group, or
Yeah.
Eric Young's group.
Yeah. Eric Young, Sheik Abdul Bashir, Kiyoshi, Brutus Magnus, Doug Williams, and Rob Terry.
So it's a faction that's a super de-duper faction. And it's just like, here's all the. It kind of feels like, here's the TNA Frontline, but on Wish. And it's like, you don't want to do that.
It's true.
Yeah. And it's just, I'm like, wow, they made the main event mafia a whole less lot cooler.
Oh yeah, that this was, if Sting getting kicked out of Main Event Mafia wasn't jumping the shark, this is jumping the shark.
And again, you just kind of have like because they would do like the monthly pay-per-views like WWE, but a
Mhm.
lot of these matches like don't really mean that much. Like there was like
Right.
Hard Justice, there was like Matt Morgan and Sting versus Kurt Angle, and I remember that was like a big controversy at the time because Kurt Angle got arrested the day or two before.
Oh right.
Yeah, so it's like, and he still retained too. So people were like, "Oh,
Like
all right."
it's like this guy's possibly going to be doing some like jail time. You're not going to,
Yeah.
do anything. Okay.
It get surprisingly that won't be the last time that
Yeah, I
TNA
know.
face something like that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But you just had a lot of like padding. It felt like with the main event
Hmm.
mafia, and it just kind of felt like we have this cool idea, we have this cool concept. All these people are champions, but it's like nothing was really happening, and that's usually the worst when that happens. I remember like doing like a video about like the worst thing that can happen when you're like a top heel faction is like the top storyline. Like there's going to be a lot of filler. Like I felt that with the Bloodline. I feel that with
Yep.
the Death Riders.
Oh yeah.
Like there's a lot of like filler, and like this unition of the World Elite just kind of felt like we're trying to like recoat a car, but it's like instead of like blue, it's now a hint like lighter, but no one notices it.
Right. Yeah. It's the same color, just like a 1%
It's
lighter.
like, no,
Like,
I changed the opaque.
oh yeah, like this was just weird, and the fact that like Eric Young fronting like a heel faction when like not that long ago he was the guy that was freaking out about his pyro.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. I Super Eric, Super Eric is running the world elite. Okay, okay, sure. like, because I remember when that first formed, I was just like, I
Yeah.
everybody else. I'm like, I kind of get it, but Eric Young, no, no, come on, don't fire Eric. Is a heel now. Come on, no,
The leader
no,
of
I
the
don't like.
Prince Justice Brotherhood with Curryman and Shark Boy, who was Stone Cold.
Right. Look at Shark Boy, who who had a head injury and was in a coma, wakes up as Steve Austin. You have Sanjay Dutt being a guru. Like, come on, man.
Just a lot of things were happening. It's kind of like, it's like when you have those dreams, but it's like you don't remember the full thing, but you remember like the weird portions of this. It's like
Hmm.
we're living that in real time. It's kind of like that, like
Absolutely.
John Cena heel turn, where it's like, dude, I had the craziest dream. John Cena turned heel on Cody with The Rock, and then like Travis Scott was doing Sage in the corner.
Yeah, Travis Scott was there
Yeah,
for reasons
yeah. Just
like
just open slapped Cody Rhodes in the ear.
busted his eardrum and
Like,
messed his eye up.
oh my gosh, but
Ooh.
he had all of that. So the main event mafia is not really doing that hot right now. And it seems
Yeah,
like the
no,
main
they're
event mafia story is in the background now. And you had it was a fatal four way and then turned to a fatal five way because, so Feast or Fired, it was a thing. And Feast or Fired was like, it's like four cases, for the world, the X Division, and the tag team titles, and the mysterious briefcase that gets somebody fired. So Hernandez was lugging around this thing for like an entire year because they wanted to push him as this top star.
mm-hmm.
So, the beginning of this Fatal 4 match, and it's Kurt Angle defending against Matt Morgan, Sting, and AJ Styles. And Hernandez says, "I'm going to cash in my Feast or Fired case to make this a Fatal 5-way." And Kurt Angle like looks surprised and shocked. Like, Hernandez does his spots, and then Eric Young just pile drives Hernandez on the stage, and Hernandez is just out of commission
Right.
for forever. Uh,
Right.
but it's
Right.
like
Yeah.
that's what turned Eric Young heel. He had a pile driver. That was his big thing at the time.
Yeah, he hit his finish on Hernandez on the rampway, and that was it.
Yeah, and then this is the match where AJ Styles wins the TNA Championship. Everyone's celebrating confetti, and the pinpoint of the match where Sting hits the Scorpion Death Drop on Kurt, and instead of going for the pin, he takes out Matt Morgan, and then AJ pins Kurt. So now the TNA Championship is on somebody that TNA wanted to portray as a top star. So thank goodness for that. But this kind of, it doesn't end the main event mafia run, but it feels like the main event mafia as a story, as a main story device, is inconsequential at this point.
Right.
Now, what are your thoughts on AJ gaining the championship? What are your thoughts on the main event mafia at this point of the story?
At this point, like the main event mafia is like, it's like, what are we doing here, gang? Like everything's falling apart. And anytime AJ Styles holds a title, I'm happy.
Mm-hmm.
I I really, really want AJ to do one more match in TNA before he hangs it up
Yeah,
because it needs to
it
happen.
feels right.
Even if it's just a one off, like
And it feels weird to say that, like, he's almost like, I believe I saw a stat like a couple months ago that said he's had more matches in WWE than he's had in TNA
which is crazy
because he was
because he
like
was there
the TNA
forever.
guy.
Yeah. He was Mr. TNA. Like he was there for what?
Yeah,
Since like from the very
yeah,
beginning to
2002 to 2014,
14. Yeah, because
13,
that's when he
14.
went to, yeah, because 14 he went to New Japan.
Yeah,
So yeah, 12 years. He was there 12 years and he's already had more matches in WWE than he did in TNA.
yeah.
It's wild to
And
think.
then like it pivots the story of the main event Bound for Glory being AJ Styles versus Sting, and people like to say Charlotte has her Charlotte in the bank, and she does. Where she returned. Sting was like the main event of Bound for Glory for at least 4 to 5 years straight,
Uh-huh.
and this
Yep.
was like teased as Sting's like retirement. Which, looking back on it, we had his retirement last year, so obviously that wasn't
Right.
really his time. But they were teasing it for a while. But the end of the main event Mafia comes after the Kurt Angle Matt Morgan match at Bound for Glory, which is
Mhm.
TNA's equivalent of WrestleMania, and they had Kurt Angle and Matt Morgan. I think it was Matt Morgan's probably best match because
Oh,
he's in there with
easily,
Kurt
yes.
Angle.
Mhm.
Kevin Nash dropped the Legends Championship to Eric Young. Let's see, the Scott Steiner and Booker T lost the TNA tag titles, and Booker T was carted out, and it was like Full Metal Mayhem, I think. And
Yeah.
I also had the IWGP championships, which TNA
Yes.
changed without the knowledge of the New Japan.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so like
I forgot about
talked
that.
about this in the TNA episode, but like it was Brutus Magnus and Doug Williams, British Invasion, defeated Team 3D for the IWGP Tag Team Championships, and they had like a relationship with New Japan at the time, but they didn't tell New Japan, and New Japan got pissed, and they wouldn't acknowledge it. They wouldn't acknowledge it.
It's just like, nope, no, they
Like
didn't.
between that and making Kazuchika Okada Okado, as in the Green Hornet, like
Oh
Kato,
my god. Yeah.
there was a reason why they severed ties for a little bit.
Yeah. I could see why.
Yeah. So Kurt Angle comes out the next night, which is a day, almost a year to the day, the Main Event Mafia form, saying like he's like, now I've learned my lesson that TNA like has all this great young talent. Change my ways, and that's when we pivot to the Desmond Wolf thing. So that was the end
Yeah.
of the run of the Main Event Mafia, like at
Mhm.
least the original incarnation.
Right.
Now, if you were to give the Main Event Mafia a grade, what would it be?
Mm, very, very interesting question. I think with how it started and like the initial goal of everything, that keeps it pretty high for me. But the ending kind of it fizzled out a little too bad,
Mhm.
so I can't really give it too high. So I would say probably, yeah, I'll give it a solid B.
Yeah, like I was like in that C plus range, like C range, just because like there were like a lot of weird detours where it's just kind of like you look at like your GPS, it's like, oh, the McDonald's is right there. Okay. Instead of going that way, you go the like the proper direction, and then you make a left turn. It's like, but McDonald's is right there, and you're like, no, this is a shortcut. But it's like, dude, I could see it from here.
You were literally all you had to do was turn the other way, and it's literally right in front of you.
Yeah, and it's just like all those different things just came to an end, and there was a lot of noise, is what I could best describe it. Where it's like,
There
you
was.
had Jarrett, you had Foley, when it really should have been about elevating the talent that you wanted to base the company around. And I think at that time, TNA was more fascinated of the legends and veterans that they had
Mhm.
instead of actually basing it around the future. Like WWE in that infamous 2018 to like 2022 era of the company relied a lot on Brock, Goldberg, past names in order to push that company forward. And the reason why they're doing so well right now is because they've actually promoted and gained trust within their current like modern day roster. The Romans, the Codys, the Seth, the Rheas, the Charlottes.
Mhm.
They
Yeah,
gained
the,
like
the
more confidence in that.
the change in management definitely helped that a lot
Yeah.
because the current guy in charge is like, I've known that these guys can carry this company the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
We had to get the old man out of the way. Now the old man is off doing whatever he's doing.
Yeah.
Now this new talent, the younger talent, can actually do something, and they've finally done some
Mm-hmm.
really good stuff because that 2017 to when Triple H took over, the dark ages of WWE, as I like to call it, was it was a hard time being a fan of WWE during that time.
It was probably one of the closest times where I'm just like, I need to take a break. Like it was that. I remember the GM, the guest GM era was a big one too.
Oh yeah. Oh
Yeah,
wow. Yeah.
that was a big one. But like with TNA, it's like the concept of the Main Event Mafia, I loved,
Mhm.
loved the concept, but it just kind of seemed like they were just dead set on just putting the focus just on the Main Event Mafia, and everybody else
Yeah.
was like a supporting player of that. Because AJ defeating Kurt Angle for the World Championship should have been like a major moment,
Oh, definitely.
but
Yeah.
Kurt Angle dropped it in a well, technically 5-way, but like a 4-way, which
Right.
wasn't as satisfying. Even though Kurt got pinned, and the finish helped build the story of AJ and Sting, it just kind of felt like where it's like it was like this huge deviation of like the story that we initially started off with. It's kind of like going from Avengers Infinity War and we're ending it with Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Right.
Where it's just kind of like if you show the movies back to back, you're just like, man, the first half was great, but what was this detour that just like happened?
Yeah, why'd we go here?
Yeah.
Like there's a logical place we could have went here,
Yeah.
but no, we had to go on this like side quest randomly.
Yeah. That's a perfect way where it's just kind of like, yeah, we have the main quest of this video game, but let's do all these side quests of different video games.
Yeah, of things that have no context to whatever we're doing.
Yeah, it's like we're playing like Pokemon, and then it's just like, all right, Modern Warfare. It's like, how do we get here?
Yeah, how make it make sense.
Yeah. And like we'll touch on it briefly, but the Main Event Mafia kind of reunited, not really.
Yeah, they tried to like once in like they tried to do it once in 2011.
Yeah, and then Kevin
but
Nash and Booker T went back to WWE.
Nah, brother, we're gonna be in the Rumble. Fuck this.
We're like, we're just gonna skedaddle real quick.
And then, hey, Dixie, sorry about you, but New York's calling.
Yep.
We gotta go.
And then they tried to run it as a babyface group with Sting, Kurt Angle, Samoa Joe, Magnus before he became world champion, Quinn Rampage Jackson.
Yeah, Aces and Eights feud. And wasn't this around the time that they oh yeah, because they had Rampage. Wasn't like the August 1 morning thing? Was that around this time?
Yeah, that was exactly around that time. Yeah.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, they bring in Tito Ortiz.
And then you have Ken Anderson with like just scratching in the back of his head, like very confused. And I'm just like, same, Ken, same.
Yeah, you look how we all feel, Ken. Like, what is happening? Why is Tito Ortiz here? Did he come back? No, he never came back.
They were building up a fight between Tito and Quinton, and I don't think that fight ever happened.
No, it didn't. Yeah. It never did.
Because they were both signed with Bellator at the time.
Yeah, because that's right. Because they were pushing Bellator pretty hard.
Yeah, but that was the Main Event Mafia. So, some good, a lot of bad.
A lot of bad.
A lot of bad. A lot of confusion.
Yeah.
Goals were met, but it is one of the main staples of TNA, and just like I think it encapsulates perfectly on how TNA was at a company during that time period, where it's like they had their established stars, they had their guys, but it's like we have these established stars. Let's just put all the focus on them, and I feel like that was a detriment to that younger roster at that time period.
Absolutely. If they would have given the younger guys more to work with in that, I think they could have drug it out longer. Yeah. They could have drug the entire like storyline of, Main Event Mafia versus the Frontline. Mm-hmm. If Jarrett didn't try to get himself over too much, I think we would have had a lot more to work with.
And then he left due to unforeseen circumstances.
But
anyway, Husky, this was a great episode, man. It was great talking to you, great chatting with you.
Dude, this was fun. This was really, really fun, man. I loved it very much. Anytime you need a guest, man, holler at me. I want to definitely do some more work with La Familia too. Absolutely, so, man. Yeah, this was very, very fun.
All right, so where can we find you? Where can we find Husky Rhodes?
You can find me on TikTok at Husky Rhodes 912. You can find me on Instagram at The Husky Rhodes. You can catch me on World Championship Wreckage doing Queen's Court with the Tribal Queen, Bree Stout, and the Wrestling Encyclopedia, Mike Duplessis, where we were initially doing Monday Night Raw from beginning to end. We will still get back to that, but with the whole like switching over to Netflix, it's been kind of a pain. Yeah. So we're going to be doing some other like random like reactionary stuff. We're going to be probably doing some stuff with like Nitro and ECW stuff. We're basically just going to try and steal from Deadlock basically and just do like random episodes of stuff right now until Raw gets back on.
Right.
But yeah, you can check us there. You can also catch me on Cole TV doing Husky's Hot Takes on PW60. And anytime that Rivet City Radio or Off Top Media is doing some stuff and they need a fill in, I'm usually hopping in over there too. I do some music stuff. You can catch me doing like electronic stuff under the name Dormir. That's on Spotify. If you go to any of my accounts, there's the link tree for that. Also have a band called Widow River. We're about ready to start recording soon. So whenever that drops, I'll be posting stuff for that too. But Richie, again, thank you so much for having me, dude. This was really, really fun.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Definitely gonna have you on again on the future. Again, WrestleMania season's coming around, so gonna have a
Oh
lot of
yeah.
WrestleMania themed shows coming up. So
Love that.
again, you can follow me at Retold Richie Mars on the Instagram, the Twitter, the TikTok. We're almost to 10K followers. That's gonna be awesome
Ooh.
because then your boy gets a little bit of money. And then you could check us out, Wrestling Retold and Relived, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, on YouTube the week after. Spotify and Apple Podcasts, so for some reason, they will always get the release first. I'm not sure why YouTube, probably like a processing thing, but
Yeah.
that's for my engineer guy to figure out. And spoiler, I am also the engineer guy. So TTFN, ta for now, and we will see you next time.